there's such an intertwining between product and customer, right? So you don't have one without the other. I think how we see it is the taking all of that context, kind of going back to the AI world here. So we have all this data, right, from millions of patients, trillions of data points, and then we have all these interactions every day. And that Thrive Live event was a great example of, we had a great time at the Sphere, just talking to people, hearing what's on their minds, and then getting like really deep in, right? You're vibe coding your own software, you're seeing what's happening in all your practices, and then you're talking about it, right? Brian did a great presentation kicking off the industry. We had some CEOs talking about it, and it really got people thinking, right, about what matters. How do you bring it back to the doctor mindset? Because again, the doctor is at the heart of all that. And so what we're trying to do is just bring all of that into what we do. And that means there's a mix of like, hey, these features and capabilities are really important, and we're going to run on those, and get those things done. And at the same time, it's being one step ahead of them, right? And I think that's what we're doing with this MCP layer. It's like, you know what? This is where the world's going. We're going to give people the ability to play with their own data and figure out what to do with it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DSO Technology Show. I'm here with my co-host, Matt McGaw, and we've got a special guest today, Ali Hyatt from Henry Schein One, HS1 as we call it, and she is the Chief Customer and Growth Officer there. Ali, welcome.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Matt. Super excited to be here today with you guys and be on this show.
Well, we don't waste any time here. Like, as you might have figured out,
Yeah.
I know Ali. She's recently did an event with me, so she knows we're kind of no nonsense over here, and we just kind of jump right into it. So we're going to do that here. So, Ali, you've been speaking a lot to customers. That is your job, and some of the customers you talk to obviously are DSOs, which is the focus of this show. What is the things when you have your many dozens and dozens of conversations with customers from a technology standpoint? What are the pain points? What are they looking for? I've been talking a lot about the challenges of implementing technology at scale through DSOs, but we got you here. Let's start with that. What are the customers sort of needing, and what are their biggest pain points?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think you framed it up well at our event together a couple weeks ago, Brian. So there's a lot of challenges, and the environment, right, in general is challenging economically overall, but it's really about the opportunities. So what I feel like I hear a lot of times, and yeah, it's like if I look at my day, it's like, call with this DSO, go visit this, this DSO, go visit this practice. It's actually fun kind of getting the mix of the small practice and the really large DSO because you really hear it from all ends of it. I think a lot of what they're thinking about is opportunity, right, with AI. So everyone knows you have to use it. Everyone is using it in their personal life, but they want to know how to realistically build it into their workflows and make it make sense, and also not just have it be about efficiency. I feel like 6 months ago, it was all about efficiency. I mean, we live that here at Henry Schein One too. We've built it into our support engine. But then what we did was use it to drive growth overall. So learning, education, how do you bring together all of that context to build something that's really useful? So I think what I hear a lot of times is it's about their main focus at the DSO level is about growth. So it is about, okay, how do I use technology to drive that clinical consistency through everything that I'm doing? If I'm a large scaling organization, I need to figure out how to build it into my workflows. Make it so that the office manager at this location is excited about technology. I was recently in a couple of DSO location practices, and they were like, 2 years ago, when I introduced new technology to my office managers, regional managers, they were like, ugh, another technology. Like, what are you giving me now? And now they're like, oh, this insurance verification stuff with this Eligibility Pro, it actually makes my life easier. So it's really about finding those opportunities and making it matter to the person that's using it. And that's super important. It's much more of a pull strategy than a push strategy overall.
Well, I mean, last year's buzzword was AI. This year's buzzword is agentic AI, and everybody's throwing out all these terms. But how do you differentiate? Because I'm spending a lot of time on this when I talk to people on this show and conferences and panels and things, and we're going to focus on this at our upcoming DICOMA event a lot. How do you differentiate when it comes to AI or the new buzzword agentic AI between shiny things and value-added solutions?
Yeah, totally. I think I know, and it's like we almost don't even talk about generative AI anymore. It's like everything's about agentic. It just switched over to that. I think what's really interesting is at our recent event that we did with DICOMA, we had a bunch of executives, DSO executives, vibe coding in the morning. Like they literally had opened up their practice management software and they were vibe coding on top of it, asking questions like, how do I improve my production on this day? That's where everyone wants to go, right? They're trying to figure it out. They're just at different stages, right? Some of them are at the data insight stage. Okay, how do I use my own data? I have thousands of patients. I have thousands of providers. How do I use my own data to get insights to tell me what to do next week? Others are at what we called the orchestrate stage. Okay, I'm really interested in bringing in agents from the outside, maybe that other partners have built, maybe even that my own organization has built and used in some way. And then others are at what we call the orchestrate layer when we think about our MCP layer. And that's like, okay, I have people, I'm ready to build. And you see it, right? Some of the DSOs are actually hiring these, engineers that are built to actually help their business and help their clinical workflows.
I mean, is the goal here to get something like, not to be silly, but like the Star Trek computer, where you've got all these systems down there, but somebody says something, if you ever watch that show, computer, run this mathematical model for me. Computer, how many patients came in today? Computer, how many canceled, appointments did we have? Computer, how is, the new receptionist doing, with her phone calls, because maybe it's listening to it. I mean, are we working towards something like that, Ali, where instead of saying, let's go check, I'll just, patient prisms listening to phone calls, or Weave, let's go check that. Or, we got Pearl diagnostic AI, let's go look at that. Or we've got, voice care AI listening to this phone call. Let's go, do an insurance verification. Let's go look at that, to like a centralized computer that governs all of these functions where you can just ask it a question and it will drill down and answer these questions. I mean, is that what we're going towards here?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. You're bringing back fond memories, Brian. When I was in fifth grade, we got to go to a live taping of a Star Trek show.
Oh, wow.
So that's what I'm thinking back to.
But I mean, this stuff is like real.
Yes.
Some of that stuff is becoming reality. I mean, I
know.
don't think we're
Finally,
zooming across
right?
the universe yet,
Yeah.
but the computer aspects are becoming reality in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. And I think it's like for a long time, like this is what it's like, oh, this is coming, this, AI stuff, it's going to be that central computer. I think this probably is the first year, that we really are starting to see it. I mean, obviously with stuff like Alexa, you had that where you're asking it, but it's not really giving you insights and information. So we're seeing it with voice. We've got ambient voice now, and doctors, right, are using it, and the ones that are ahead that get it, right, the ones that are like, hey, I don't want to sit here and take notes, are figuring out how to use it in a way that makes them a better doctor, right? It gives them that experience that the patient in the chair really wants, to make it simpler so they can focus on them. So I think it's a great question. Are we going there? I think there's always a human element to it, which is important. And I think that's what, you hear about a lot of times is like, how does the human then take that? They may build a really good prompt or skill and then build that into what they're doing. But then there's still that element of that human context on top of it to make the patient experience what it needs to be.
Well, Matt, I mean, you want to have the right type of human contacts. What I mean is, you don't want the humans doing mundane, monotonous, tedious tasks. You want the humans. Remember, Matt, you were there at, several events where, Larry Benz, the CEO of Dental Care Alliance, gave a presentation that I thought was wonderful, and he's going to do one in DICOMA here soon, where he said, you should use AI to let humans focus on humanness and being with patients and bedside manner. So, you shouldn't, at least his presentation, which I love, said, you shouldn't develop AI to basically take away human tasks that, we need empathy and we need sympathy and we need to be with patients. You should use AI to take, the mundane, monotonous, tedious tasks away and let humans free up time for humans to be humans. And, Matt, what are your thoughts on sort of where we're going with this?
Well, that's why we're focusing as much on the agentic workflows now, is because the agents are the ones that are doing the monotonous things to allow the rest of us to be more human, or inside of a DSO, the rest of us inside that DSO to be able to focus on things that provide positive outcomes and desired outcomes of the business. I feel like that's probably why the agentic, like the agents actually doing stuff, is important. I'm curious about something like I've seen, and let me know if this is inaccurate statement. I've seen like a shift from the HS1 crew on how you attack customer interactions. I mean, we saw it from the Dykema and HS1 Thrive Live event, where I think you got people in a room and you had conversations with these folks around like what their experiences are. Like it seems to be a shift to being more customer centric versus product centric. Would that be accurate? I think that's the first question for me. And the second is like, how do you determine internally what you guys are really focusing on when it comes to AI and other technology solutions? Because there's so many things that people want, and determining like what the priority is behind those would be my general question towards you, Ali.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's such an intertwining between product and customer, right? So you don't have one without the other. I think how we see it is taking all of that context, kind of going back to the AI world here. So we have all this data, right, from millions of patients, trillions of data points, and then we have all these interactions every day. And that Thrive Live event was a great example of, we had a great time at the Sphere, just talking to people, hearing what's on their minds, and then getting like really deep in, right? You're vibe coding your own software, you're seeing what's happening in all your practices, and then you're talking about it, right? Brian did a great presentation kicking off the industry. We had some CEOs talking about it, and it really got people thinking, right, about what matters. How do you bring it back to the doctor mindset? Because again, the doctor is at the heart of all that. And so what we're trying to do is just bring all of that into what we do. And that means there's a mix of like, hey, these features and capabilities are really important, and we're going to run on those, and get those things done. And at the same time, it's being one step ahead of them, right? And I think that's what we're doing with this MCP layer. It's like, you know what? This is where the world's going. We're going to give people the ability to play with their own data and figure out what to do with it, right? There's questions every day, like, what should I be focusing on in production? What should my schedule look like? We're going to give them that ability. You have to do it safely, right? So that there's security behind it, so someone doesn't blow up the whole system overall. And I think in general, we're using that, there's kind of this element of like, okay, 80% we're in on the customers, exactly what's happening every day. We understand their workflows. I know in some of the discussions that Brian had at that event, there's discussions about like, you don't want a partner coming in from the outside and saying, oh, here's what you need to do. They need to come in a way from the inside and understand the workflows. And that's really important to kind of getting all this technology stuff. I think to your question about prioritization, that's how we think about it, right? You have to have that mix of innovation. What's the thing that they didn't think they needed? You think about the Ford and the car, right? The thing that they get it and they're like, how did I live without this? Mix that with like, okay, I just really need this RCM centralization thing to run my everyday. So that mix, I think, comes together really well. We try to, listen and focus with the different leaders, right? Whether it's the RCM leaders, the clinical leaders, the COO, everyone that's involved in that.
Do you think that's a little different in this day and age than maybe it was 3 years ago? Obviously, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, yeah.
I joined Henry Schein 3.5 years ago, so I like to say yes. I do. I think we have a new leadership team that's just really our CEO, Brian, and everyone on the team is just really focused on, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, in the group. A lot of people, I personally, before this, came from a startup growth company that went public, telehealth during 2020. So you couldn't have gotten more crazy than that. There's just an element of like moving quickly, pushing, and just making sure you hear the customers every day, right? You don't go a single day without talking to them, talking to different personas at them to understand what's going on. So yeah, I think we generally couldn't be more excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the event, that we put on was a wonderful event. I mean, I thought it went great, and I'm not, I'm saying that because of the conversations and
Yeah.
the time spent with people. I mean, I would like to say, because I put some of the content on, that I thought it was
You did a
good, but
great
that's
job.
not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from the standpoint of it looked like we had several hundred people in the audience, and they were, it was full almost the entire time. And the conversations out in the hallway, it's one of those things where, you're putting on presentations on stage, and sometimes, you'll see people walking out in the hall, and you'll be like, well, that's kind of a bummer. I'm on stage. Where are they going? But then you realize, look, you don't put on the event, if it's me, to hear me talk. Like, I'd like to think I got a nice message, but that's not why we're doing it. We're doing it to connect people together. And when I drilled down and, talked to some of the people, I found out, they were having super productive discussions, Ali, about technology out in the hallway amongst themselves, with each other. So sometimes, the event is a smashing success, but, it's not obvious. You're like, well, those people are going
Yeah.
out in the hallway. Where are they going? But they're going out to network and talk about things that they heard. And when they come back from that event, they're like, we loved it. When's the next one?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. No, and we really appreciate all that you did to partner with us there, Brian. The content was great, to your point, but what was really cool was kind of how people took the topics. And one thing that stood out to me was it like really understanding people's excitement about what they're building at their DSOs. So technology is an enabler to what they're doing, but a lot of those leaders there, founders, CEOs, clinical leaders of those DSOs, it's about like their vision that they're building. And so they're taught when they were there, they're talking to different people to be like, how do I build it? It's not like, okay, how do I implement this RCM thing? It's like, how do I implement a system that makes patients, you know, have a great experience when they leave? How do we get paid faster, right? That's what top DSOs like, get paid a lot faster than the other ones do. And then clinical excellence. I think we spent a lot of time on what does that mean? I think David Meese, CEO of Pearl Street, I think really resonated on the panel you did, Brian, with the audience around how he thought about kind of ideas around culture, clinical consistency and excellence, and how that all comes together. And you could really see people nodding their heads, right? Like it is about the doctors in the end. Like they are the ones that make all of this go round. And so people are really connecting that to growth, driving revenue overall, and not just talking about like, how do we cut costs, which, it is the reality of for a lot of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the business begins and ends with the dentist. And sometimes I feel like that gets lost a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you're running a business over that, billing and collecting and RCM and, labor costs and supplies and equipment and technology, but it begins and ends with the dentist. And the organizations that seem to do the best, I'm in year 31 of all this, are the ones that win the hearts and minds of the doctors. If you win the hearts and minds of the doctors, they'll do more production, they'll go the extra mile for you. And having doctors that are highly motivated, want to come to work every day, want to be there, enjoy being there, really transcends all this other stuff. I mean, all the technology piece will fall into place nicely if you win the hearts and minds of the doctors, and any benefit you might get from cutting some costs would be far outweighed by having generally happy dentists that are,
Yeah,
going the extra
absolutely.
mile to work.
Yep. No, you're right on there. And I like we love working with Dr. Acerno at Smile Brands. And it's like he always says, thanks for sharing the vision, right? Like that's what the top leaders think about is like it's a vision. We're building it. We got to have Steve Built on stage, with you interviewing him too. Like that's what it's about. And the real leaders, right, like drive that inspiration and vision throughout everything that they do.
So let's shift gears, Ali, for a second. You released, I think, to the public. I think I saw it for a while, so it seems like
Yeah,
it's been going on
got to
for a
sneak
while
peek.
with me. But we released to the public, I think, last week, if I'm remembering correctly, the
Yep.
Catalyst report. And can you just very briefly, for people that don't know, because it's available, to the public, they can look at it. How did this come about? What was it? And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about it. But how did it all come about, and what was the purpose of the Catalyst report?
Yeah, so great question, and yeah, thanks for your partnership in that too, Brian. So this is our fifth annual Catalyst report, but we change it and transform it every year, right, to what really matters to customers. And I actually remember last year I did a couple sessions with big DSOs, and they had a lot of deep questions about how do you define this? How do you define this? Because they're all trying to compare themselves to each other. So we actually spent a lot of time like digging into like the definitions, making that clear, what makes sense. So what we do is we have a version for DSOs and a version for private practices. And obviously this is more DSO focused, but we take a subset of 5,000 of our 70,000 or so practices, and we look at the data. And because we work with both the solo practices and the DSOs, what we're able to do is make a lot of comparisons too, which is actually awesome, right? So we found, there's different key things that come out across both reports, right? Things around clinical consistency, schedule reliability is a hidden driver. So kind of key things there. But I think what was really interesting is seeing the differences. What we do is we look at what numbers do the top 10% get, and then what does the average get, right? So what you're doing overall is you're seeing things like, a top performer for revenue collections on the DSO side, top 10% gets 97% patient collections. Average gets 72%. That's a really big difference in terms of the revenue you're collecting. And also, what a waste of time, right? That your doctors are seeing people having these experiences, but you're not closing the loop, right? To actually get paid for the service you provided. So a lot of it is really looking into that. We, talk to experts like you, and then other, DSOs to talk about what they're seeing and actually how they're taking the data that they get from within, their own technology and platform to then what do they do about it, right? So what does that mean for patient experience? Do they make sure patients can pay via text? Make sure the claims go through with things like Image Verify to ensure that when you take an image, AI helps you actually get it through to the insurance company so it doesn't get rejected or denied. And so it's really that bringing together of like, hey, it's great, to have all this data. What do you do about it?
Well, the big takeaway for me, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be gleaned from this report, but one thing that was sort of a validation of something I've been saying for a long time, I didn't have a report to back me up, but it was just obvious from the time I spend with, hundreds of DSOs that, scale doesn't mean success. I mean, just because you scale, now, I've said this over and over on stage, I've said it to the DSOs that I was working with over the years that, just because you've scaled up does not guarantee success, doesn't mean you're going to be any better than a solo office. You've got to actually execute the business of dentistry, and there's a lot of things that have Ali been added. Like it used to be 10 years ago. If I'm talking about the business of dentistry, I'm just like sound billing and collection practices. Being able to master the nuances of billing and lowering increasing, attracting and retaining talent, increasing retention, lowering employees that are leaving and things like that, and having a nice culture. These were things, but now you've got a whole tech stack that goes into, when I say you've got to master the business of dentistry, you've got a whole tech stack to worry about. But if you do that right, then yes, scale can be tremendous. But if you don't do it correctly, Ali, there is no guarantee of success at scale, and this report sort of backed that up for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you had some really, really good points there. I think one of the best examples of that is around patient retention. So while we've seen in general no-show rates and cancellation rates have dropped this year, patient retention has gone down, and it actually went down more for DSOs. And so obviously you can tie that back to, a doctor at the chair, but I think it's much more than that. There's an example in there from Dr. Kwame Watson, who has a whole chain of like mobile clinics for dental.
Yep.
And he quantified it, right? Like he said, we took 5,000, there were 5,000 appointments scheduled online last year. So just, patient came in, directly through, came right into the practice management software. It's like, that's 25,000 minutes that our people were not on the phone talking to patients. Like, there's a lot you can do with 25,000 minutes. And so I think, yeah, bringing that to life, it's right. It's not about just because you're big doesn't mean you do everything well. I think Heartland's a really good example of like, they're big and they've decided to do it well, like make sure everything's like box checked and all that. And you have to focus on that, as you scale, or else it's really hard to come out on top.
I mean, Matt, there's no, what I think we've learned, and again, I kind of knew it anecdotally, there's no automatic benefit from being at scale. In fact, if you're not doing things well, the problems can get magnified and become exponential and crazy, versus if you're in a private practice and you're not doing something well, you might have a problem, but it's isolated because you're only so big. But if you've got hundreds of offices, the problem can magnify in a frightening way. I mean, you've got to execute, Matt, and do things correctly. And if you do and you scale up, best in class execution, then you got something really special. But if you're sort of mediocre or not good and you scale up mediocre and not good, Matt, you're going to have something not so special. It's, extra not so special because you got all these offices.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like maybe backtracking, you mentioned that you were like polling practices, like where is all the data coming from that's going into the Catalyst report? I think is the first question, because I'm not sure everybody knows that. I'm not exactly 100% sure either. I'd be interested to see like where that data is coming from, and also if there's anything that's top of mind that maybe private practice, and to Brian's point about like scale, like the ones that are at scale, they're maybe doing things well or not doing things well, and maybe at private practice they're doing things well or not doing things well. That was an interesting comparison there.
So yeah, the data comes from, it's all, our customers on our practice management software, and then connected in through Jarvis Analytics. So that takes it, as a layer, and we use that to analyze. So it's really all this data in there. We take it with our teams and just like look at it and run it in so many different ways. Okay, right. So what if you had this, but not this? What does that look like? So there's a lot behind it too. And yeah, I love data. So happy to kind of go more into it with anyone who's interested. I think to your question about the private practices versus the DSOs, what Brian said just now really resonated with me about the scale, right? So I think about when I first joined Henry Schein One, there's a big DSO that we work with, and I remember going into their headquarters and watching the RCM team. They literally had an Excel up on their computers, and they would go through, right, and call the insurance companies to verify. And we said, like, well, what happens at the end of the day or the week if you don't get through the list? And they're like, well, we just, kind of start at the next line, right? Like, we never get through the list. We just go to the next line. And you're like, how could that be the way? And so you think about it from a large DSO perspective, well, that really adds up. So then when I think about a private practice, thinking about one in particular, Whitley Family Dental, who's one of our early adopters of Eligibility Pro, they literally had a person that all day, every day, they would just be calling the insurance companies. And you see that. You walk into any dental office, that's what's up on the front desk. And they just got rid of that, right? Like the calling. It just automatically shows up and appears. And so it's easier to pilot stuff sometimes when you're a smaller practice. But what I think that means for the large DSOs is, you pilot it at a couple offices, you make sure you have your protocols in place, right? Your SOPs, you learn from those first ones, and then you roll it out. And that's what a lot of the big ones do really well, is figure that out, because you're gonna get feedback that you just didn't know. A couple months ago, I was in the Great Lakes practices, and we had just rolled out in their practices Image Verify, which gives you like a 1 to 5 star rating on your image as it goes through, obviously in partnership with the AI companies. And they rolled it out, and the goal of it as we rolled it out was, consistency, right? Like, so that you take the picture and it says like, oh, you haven't cut off this tooth, right? Or it's too blurry, it's not going to get through. But what they found was like, actually, all the clinicians were using it for consistency, right? So the clinical director was using it to be like, oh, this dental assistant isn't taking very good, images. I can use that to help them. And so I think those are the insights you really get from those pilots, which oftentimes those private practices are able to, do more quickly in a lot of ways.
So, Ali, let me ask you this. We got a few minutes left here on the show today. What things excite you? You're spending so much time talking to customers and then also with the tech team, learning about everything that's going on at HS1. If we go now, one thing I learned, when human beings are working on, technology, it kind of goes like this. When AI works on it, it kind of goes like this. And we're at a point where it used to be like, hey, check back next year. Then it was like, checks back in 6 months. Then it was like, check back in 3 months.
Right.
Not too far in the future, it's going to be like, if you've got a problem, check back in 10 minutes or something, and we're going to have it. But what sort of excites you of new technologies and things on the horizon? If I said, let's think about the next rest of this year into next year, what kind of excites you?
Yeah. For me, it all goes back to the doctor, right? So they're the heart of what we do every day. And so there's a lot of exciting stuff that we're doing around what we call the next generation clinical workflow. So the voice notes that I talked about, right? Ambient voice, like as our chief clinical officer, Dr. Hungate says, right? Nobody wants to be taking notes, right? By the end of the year, if you're still taking notes, then you just like taking notes. So that's one of the key things. We're also doing a lot of stuff around disease progression, right? So actually being able to compare what happened before to now. So a lot of exciting things there. And for me, that's what at our, Thrive Live Dicoma event, like that's what like these clinicians really lit up on. Like that's why I went to dental school, right? To do that stuff to help patients overall. So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff there. We partnered with AWS. They've been an amazing partner to just get us to do stuff really quickly. So I'm super excited just about like the pace, to your point, Brian, right? Like it's literally like the next day things are different with AI. And so having partners, right, that help you get there much more quickly is what's, super key to that. And just having a team, right, that's like bought in behind it with a bunch of stuff that's really driven by customers, right? And what would make their lives better, what would make their practices more efficient, grow faster overall.
Yeah, I'm excited. Two things that you said in there. One, the tedious things like taking notes or populating a lot of these or claims forms and things. We're getting to the point where not only will it take notes, but when it realizes, I'm saying the AI realizes what was done, it will populate the claim form without you having to do it, and it'll make sure it's done correctly. So there's not going to be a defect in the whole thing. But what excites me a little bit is this predictive AI. They'll look at your mouth and based on, like you said, billions of cases or maybe more, they'll say, look, I know you don't really have any symptoms now, and we noted like maybe your gums slightly receding or this or that, and everything's fine, and we could send you out of here and you'd be great this year and next year. But based on billions of patients, Ali, in 10 years this tooth's going to come out if we don't do something about it. And you might not think you want to get treatment today because you feel great and there's not a problem, but we've looked at 1 billion patients with exactly where you are, and we can predict, let's say the patient's 55, when you're 65, this tooth's coming out here. If you're not careful, that stuff really excites me.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? Like that's the future if we're able to do that. And that's the key, right, to case acceptance, treatment acceptance overall. If you can see like what will happen to you, like, right, that's what's going to change your life. And that's what's going to make the doctors and all the staff members, really excited to come to work every day. So I think it's a huge vision and really great to be a part of it.
Matt, why don't you have the last word here with Ali?
Yeah, I feel like there's going to be a feature on this MCP layer that just says like computer, like, access last month's production or something through Brian's analysis from the Star Trek. I love that show too, by the way. That's cool. We'll have to talk about your experience on set, Ali, next time I see you.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think what I'm seeing just from my time spending time at the event a couple weeks ago is a new direction that you guys really seem to be taking, and that direction is around a couple things around making sure doctors are listened to and making sure customer experience is at the forefront. And I look forward to seeing more from what you guys do at HS1, because I think it's always tough to have a large organization and to be nimble and to be innovative. But some of the new launches that have come out, like the MCP layer, are super innovative for the dental space, and it's really exciting to see. My one comment for you is that Catalyst report, like, get some like LinkedIn posts, like get some awareness out there about the different insights that are in there, because I think there's some really super interesting stuff. So thanks for joining us.
So, Ali, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a great point, Matt. And maybe, Ali, as we wrap up here, tell us, how can people access the Catalyst report?
Yeah, it's available on our website. Happy to send out the link. You can find it on our LinkedIn.
What is the website? You can say it. I know we try not to be salesy here, but go ahead. What is the website?
Yeah, you can find it on henryschein1.com, on dentrixsn.com, any of our outlets there, and yeah, on our Henry Schein 1 LinkedIn account as well. And obviously, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to send it to everyone, because I love talking about it too.
Well, Ali, this has been a real pleasure having you here, and thanks so much. We're going to keep track of you. We're going to stay in touch with you, and we'll certainly have you back, sometime before the end of the year to kind of get an update on all this stuff. But really enjoyed spending time with you today. Thanks for being here. This is the DSO Technology Show, and we look forward to seeing everybody next time.
Thank you.